My sister burned my passport to trap me into babysitting her kids, sabotaging my planned trip to France for my graduation. No one will go on a trip, now you will take off my baby's pampers and we will rest. Little did they know, I packed my things and left at night the next morning, when they woke up to a shocking surprise. I'm Kelly. I'm 23 years old and living with my parents while finishing up my last year of college. You'd think life would be pretty straightforward right now. Study, pass my exams, and finally graduate. But no, things are far from simple. And the main reason is my older sister, Lauren, and her twin toddlers. Lauren is 30, married, and has her own house across town. You'd assume that means she handles her own responsibilities, especially when it comes to taking care of her own kids. But in my family, things don't work that way. Ever since her twins were born 5 years ago, I've somehow ended up as her go-to babysitter, whether I like it or not. It all started when I was just a freshman in college. One day, Lauren showed up at our house unexpectedly, carrying 2 tiny babies and a diaper bag that looked like it weighed more than she did. She had this urgent look on her face. "Kelly, I have a really important meeting. Can you watch them just for an hour?" she asked. I didn't think much of it at the time. They were so little, barely a few months old, and I figured it wouldn't be too hard. So, I said yes. That 1 hour turned into 2. Then 3. Then 4. Before I knew it, the sun had set, and I was exhausted from changing diapers, feeding, and trying to calm down 2 fussy babies. When Lauren finally came back, she wasn't carrying work documents or looking stressed from a long meeting. No. She was holding several shopping bags and had a guilty smile on her face. "Thanks so much. You're such a natural with them," she said cheerfully. I should have known right then that this was only the beginning. From that day on, Lauren started dropping off the twins whenever she needed to run errands, go to appointments, or, let's be real, just get some time to herself. At first, it was for a couple of hours. Then, it turned into entire weekends. I try to set boundaries. I really did. "Lauren, I have midterms coming up," I told her once when she showed up unannounced, diaper bags in hand. "I really need to study." She just rolled her eyes and brushed past me into the living room. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, already setting up their things. "They mostly just sleep anyway. You can study while they nap." Anyone who has ever been around babies knows that's not how it works. Between the endless diaper changes, feeding schedules, and their constant need for attention, finding time to study was impossible. I was falling behind in my classes, running on barely any sleep and missing out on time with my friends. One weekend, after she dropped them off for the 3rd time in a row, I finally snapped. "Lauren, I haven't seen my friends in weeks." I complained. She just shrugged. "You'll be fine. They love spending time with you." "Sure, but at what cost?" Now, as I count down the days to my college graduation, I can't help but wonder, will she ever stop relying on me like this? Or, will I still be babysitting these kids when I'm 30? I need time for myself too. "I need some time for myself too," I told Lauren, hoping she would understand. She just rolled her eyes. "What do you mean? You have plenty of free time. The babies don't take up that much of it." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Besides, isn't this what sisters are for? We need to help each other." That became her favorite line. Every time I tried to say no, every time I told her I had classes, homework, or wanted to see my friends, she would remind me, sisters should help each other. To Lauren, nothing was more important than family. And because of that, my life kept repeating the same cycle, month after month, year after year. My college experience wasn't like my classmates. While they were going to parties, making memories and enjoying their youth, I was babysitting. I learned how to write essays with one hand while rocking a crying baby with the other. The twins grew from tiny, helpless newborns into energetic toddlers, but Lauren's expectations never changed. If anything, they got bigger. "They're so much easier to handle now," she'd say. "They can walk and talk. It's basically like having little friends over." But 5-year-olds still need constant supervision. They still get into everything, whether it's climbing bookshelves or drawing on the walls with markers. Watching them was never as easy as Lauren made it sound. Finally, after 4 exhausting years of juggling school and babysitting, my graduation day came and went. I was officially done with college. To celebrate, my friends and I met at our favorite cafe, the place where we had spent countless hours studying and dreaming about the future. "So, what's next for everyone?" Diane asked, stirring her latte. "We're all heading in different directions soon." "That's what I wanted to talk about," Heather said excitedly. "We should do something together before we all go our separate ways. One last adventure." "What about France?" I suggested. I had always wanted to go there. The idea caught on instantly. It was like lighting a match in dry grass. Suddenly, everyone was talking at once, pulling out their phones, checking flights, and looking up places to stay. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of excitement. Not for Lauren, not for babysitting, but for myself. I couldn't believe this was really happening. My grandmother had given me $10,000 as a graduation gift, and now my dream of traveling was finally coming true. Look at these flight prices, Maria said excitedly. If we book now, we can get really good deals. We spent the next few hours planning everything: flights, hotels, sightseeing. By the time we left the cafe, we had booked our tickets and reserved our hotel rooms. Our trip was set for just a few weeks away. I was beyond excited. That evening, when I got home, I found out my parents had invited Lauren and her family over for dinner. I couldn't wait to share my big news. "We're going to France," I said, grinning. Lauren's fork dropped onto her plate with a loud clink. Her eyes widened. "When exactly are you planning to go?" she asked, her voice sharp. "The July," I said, taking another bite of Mom's lasagna. "We got amazing deals on the tickets." Lauren's face turned red. "The July? Are you kidding me?" I looked up, confused. "What's wrong with July?" "That's when Jack and I are going on our trip." "You knew that. You did this on purpose," she snapped. "What? No. I didn't know." "Don't lie. You absolutely planned this just so you wouldn't have to watch the twins." I put down my fork, suddenly not hungry anymore. "Lauren, I didn't know about your trip. We just planned this today." "Well, you need to cancel it," she said firmly. "You can go to France anytime, but we've already booked everything for our trip, and we need you to watch the kids." "I can't cancel," I said, trying to stay calm. "We've already paid for our tickets and hotels too. Besides, this is my only chance to travel with my friends before everyone moves away." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. Your friends will still be here. My trip is more important. I haven't had a vacation in years. You need to stay and babysit." I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eyes. "I'm not changing my plans, Lauren. Everything is booked, and I'm going." "This is ridiculous. You're being completely selfish," she shouted. My face burned with frustration. "Selfish," I repeated. "I've spent the last 4 years dropping everything whenever you needed a babysitter. This might be my last chance to travel with my friends before we all move away. Do you understand that? We won't get another chance like this." Lauren slammed her hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. "And what am I supposed to do with the twins? Have you thought about that?" I opened my mouth to answer, but she kept going. "Mom and Dad are too busy," she added quickly. "Mom is working overtime at the office, and Dad is still recovering from his health problems. You know that." I stared at her, my heart pounding. I knew she was hoping I'd back down like I always did, but this time I wasn't going to. I finally chose myself. I watched Dad quietly push his food around his plate, avoiding eye contact. He had been looking tired lately, that was true, but I knew what Lauren was doing, twisting the situation to get her way, like always. "There's an easy solution," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Hire a babysitter." Lauren let out a loud, sarcastic laugh. "A babysitter? I don't trust strangers with my kids. Besides, Jack and I are saving up to buy a house. We can't waste money on a babysitter when you're perfectly capable of watching them." I crossed my arms. "If you can afford a vacation, you can afford a babysitter." "That's different," she snapped. "This trip is important for our marriage. Jack and I need time together." Then her tone softened, slipping into her usual guilt trip. "There's no problem here, Kelly. You just need to stay with the twins like you always do. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" Something inside me snapped. "You know what? I'm done arguing about this," I said firmly. "I've made my decision. I'm going to France." "Kelly, no." I stood up from the table. "I've spent years changing my plans for you. I've missed parties, study groups, and time with my friends because you needed a babysitter. Not anymore. You're not going to guilt me out of this trip." "This isn't about guilt," Lauren shot back. "It's about family responsibility." "And what about your responsibility as a parent?" I said, my voice rising. "It's not my job to provide free childcare whenever you want it. If you need someone to watch the twins, hire a babysitter." I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eye. "I'm going to France with my friends. And that's final." Lauren's face turned bright red. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't wait to hear it. I walked away from the table, heart pounding. For too long, I had let her control my life with guilt and the idea of family duty. But this time, I was choosing myself. The calm before the storm. The next 2 weeks were strangely quiet. Mom and Dad stayed out of the fight between Lauren and me, only saying that we needed to work things out ourselves. But Lauren? Nothing. No calls. No texts. No surprise visits with the twins. It should have felt peaceful, but instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. I focused on packing and getting ready for my trip, trying to push down the anxiety in my stomach. The day before I was supposed to leave, I was going through my final checklist when I realized I had forgotten a few things. "I'm running to the store." I called out to Mom, grabbing my car keys. Just need to pick up some last-minute stuff for tomorrow. I was gone for maybe an hour, weaving through the crowded store to find everything I needed. But when I got back home, I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped through the door. My passport was ruined. I stepped through the door, and something fell off. The house was too quiet, but at the same time, I could hear the faint sound of giggling coming from the living room. My heart started pounding. I knew those giggles. Gary and Nicholas were here. But why? Lauren hadn't brought them over in 2 weeks. I rushed into the living room and froze. There, sitting cross-legged on the floor were my nephews. In their small hands was my passport. No, no, no. I lunged forward, snatching it from them. My hands were shaking as I held the booklet, whispering, "Please be okay. Please be okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. I flipped it open and my stomach dropped. Where my photo should have been, there was just a ragged hole. The edges were uneven, clearly cut with scissors. The pages? Completely covered in colorful scribbles. Red, blue, green, and purple marker streaks ran across every single page. Even the visa stamps and official pages were destroyed. I started screaming. I couldn't hold it in. All the stress, all the frustration, all the careful planning, gone in an instant. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the ruined passport to my chest. My passport. My passport. I collapsed onto the couch, shaking. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when I was less than 24 hours away from my dream trip. My screams echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls like my shattered dreams of France. Through my tears, I noticed something else. There wasn't a single adult in sight. Who had left the twins alone? And where had they even gotten scissors? Before I could process it, Mom, Dad, and Lauren rushed into the living room, drawn by my screams. I held up my destroyed passport, my hands still trembling. "Look what they did," I choked out between sobs. "Look at my passport." Lauren's face showed no shock, no guilt, no apology. Instead, she just crossed her arms, sighed, and clicked her tongue like she was scolding a child. "Kelly, you really need to be more careful with your important things," she said in a condescending voice. I blinked. Was she serious? "How many times have I told you not to leave stuff lying around where the kids can get them?" She continued, shaking her head like this was somehow my fault. Then she turned to our parents, her voice suddenly calm and reasonable, as if she were just discussing the weather. "You know how careless Kelly can be," she said. "She probably left her passport out on the bed or something. The twins are just curious. They found it and wanted to play." I snapped. "Are you kidding me?" I shot up from the couch, my whole body shaking with rage. "That's impossible. She thought she could trap me again. I never leave my things out, especially when the twins are here," I said firmly. "I've learned that lesson after 5 years of babysitting them." Lauren raised an eyebrow, pretending to be confused. "Well, clearly, you didn't learn it well enough." "Oh, that was rich coming from her." "If I'm so careless," I snapped, my voice getting louder, "then why do you always leave your kids with me? Why trust such an irresponsible person with your precious twins?" Mom and Dad stood silently between us, their eyes darting back and forth like they were watching a tennis match. Mom looked worried. Dad's hands were clenched at his sides. They had never seen me this angry before. And I wasn't done. "Another thing," I continued, anger bubbling inside me like a storm ready to explode. "My passport was in my suitcase. In a locked suitcase. Inside that, it was in a zippered security pocket inside a folder with my other documents." I stared hard at Lauren. "Are you seriously trying to tell me that 3 5-year-olds somehow managed to break into all of that by themselves?" For a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear. But just as quickly, it was gone. She put on her usual calm, innocent expression. The same one she always used when sweet-talking me into babysitting for just a few hours that always turned into days. "I don't know how it happened," she said smoothly, her words slow and carefully chosen. "Kids can be very resourceful when they want to be, but there's no point in placing blame here. The fact is, you clearly weren't careful enough with your documents." I felt sick. She wasn't going to admit it. She wasn't going to take any responsibility. Instead, she folded her arms and shrugged. "The twins are 5 years old, Kelly. They can't be held responsible for this. You're the adult here. This is your fault." Her voice was calm, her face blank, like she wasn't ripping my entire future apart in one breath. I had spent years giving in to her, years of dropping everything to babysit, years of missing out on parties, study groups, and weekend trips. Years of watching my life shrink to fit around her needs. And now, this was how she repaid me? Lauren turned to our parents, putting on her best fake sympathetic voice. "Well," she sighed, "since Kelly won't be able to go on her trip now, she can just stay home and watch the twins while Jack and I go on our vacation. It actually works out perfectly." Then she smiled. That same sickly sweet smile she always used when dumping her responsibilities on me. The room started spinning. I felt bile rise in my throat. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the couch, violent sobs shaking my body. Through my tears, I realized something. She thought she had won. She thought she had trapped me again, but she was wrong. This time, I wasn't giving in. The truth comes out. I saw Mom's shocked expression and Dad's clenched jaw. In the corner, the twins stood unusually quiet. Their small faces looked confused as they watched the argument unfold. They kept glancing between their mother and me, unsure if they had done something wrong. It felt like hours had passed, but it was probably only minutes. My chest was tight, but I finally managed to catch my breath. A strange calm washed over me. It was the kind of calm that comes after a storm, when you realize you have nothing left to lose. I looked up at my father. "Dad," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Lauren did this. She planned the whole thing. Those little boys didn't get into my suitcase by themselves." My hands were still trembling, but my voice was steady. I wasn't going to be the quiet, obedient little sister anymore. Lauren let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. It cut through the room like a knife. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Now you're just being ridiculous. You can't throw around such serious accusations without proof, Kelly. Where's your evidence?" She was so confident. Too confident. It was the confidence of someone who had always gotten away with everything. The smug look on her face made my hands shake with anger. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Dad spoke. His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it that made everyone stop. He turned to the twins. "Gary, Nicholas, come here for a minute." The boys hesitated, then walked over. Dad knelt down so he was at their level. His eyes, usually warm, were serious now. "Can you tell Grandpa where you got Aunt Kelly's passport?" The twins exchanged glances. Then, Gary stepped forward, bouncing slightly on his toes like he always did when he was excited to share something. "Mommy gave it to us," he announced proudly. "She said we were going to surprise Aunt Kelly." Nicholas nodded quickly, not wanting to be left out. "Yeah. Mommy said Aunt Kelly had an ugly picture in her passport and we should cut it out." My breath caught in my throat. Gary kept going, happily spilling every detail. "She gave us the big scissors from the kitchen and the markers too. Mommy said we could make it pretty with lots of colors," Nicholas added. "She said Aunt Kelly would be so happy." Silence. A deep, heavy silence that filled the entire room. The only sound was the slow ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. I turned to look at Lauren. Her face had gone pale. All the confidence she had just moments ago, gone. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, my perfect, untouchable older sister was speechless. Mom's hand was pressed against her mouth, her eyes flicking between Lauren and me like she was seeing us both clearly for the first time. Dad's expression had turned to stone. His earlier patience had disappeared. Now, there was something else in his eyes. Something that told me things would never be the same again. Everything changed that night. I had never seen Lauren look scared before. But now, she was terrified. And what happened next would stay in my memory forever. Dad, who had never raised his voice in all my years, suddenly exploded. "What is wrong with you?" His roar shook the entire room. The twins clutched each other, their little faces full of fear. "Have you completely lost your mind, Lauren?" Lauren took a shaky step back, her face white as a sheet. "Dad, don't you dare try to explain this away," he thundered. His hands trembled as he pointed at her. "This isn't just some childish prank. You destroyed your sister's passport. You manipulated your own children into helping you sabotage Kelly's trip." Mom pulled the twins close, shielding them from the fight. I sat frozen on the couch, watching my father finally unleash years of pent-up frustration. "We have always helped you, Lauren. Your mother and I have bent over backwards to support you. Kelly has sacrificed her entire college experience to be your personal babysitter, and this is how you repay her." Lauren's lips trembled. "I just needed." Dad let out a bitter laugh. You've crossed every line there is to cross." Then his voice dropped to something even scarier than his shouting. A cold, steely tone. "Well, let me tell you something. That agreement we had about helping you buy a house, consider it canceled." Lauren's face drained of color. "What? No? Dad, please." "That $400,000, he said, eyes burning with anger. "It's not going to you anymore. I'm giving it to Kelly instead. She can use it to buy her own apartment, far away from your manipulation and control." Lauren burst into tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She turned to Mom, desperate for help. But Mom just shook her head, her voice full of disappointment. "I'm so disappointed in you, Lauren. I never thought you'd do something like this. I don't even recognize the person you've become." Silence fell over the room. The only reminder of the chaos? My ruined passport, still lying on the coffee table. My dream trip? Gone. At least for now. But then, my phone rang. It was Diane. When I told her what had happened, her response made me burst into fresh tears, but this time, they weren't sad ones. "Then we'll reschedule," she said simply. "It'll take, what, a couple of months to get a new passport? We'll wait." And then I heard the voices of my other friends in the background. "All of us will wait." I had lost my trip, but I had finally gained my freedom. And that was worth more than any vacation. A trip worth waiting for. I felt a lump in my throat, touched by their loyalty. "You guys would really wait for me?" I asked. "Of course, all of us," Heather said in our group chat. "France has been there for thousands of years. It can wait a little longer." Maria had already started looking up how to change our bookings. "Most airlines and hotels have flexible policies," she said. "We might lose a small fee, but it's worth it to go together." Their support meant everything to me. While my sister had tried to ruin my plans, my friends proved that real family isn't always about blood. Sometimes, it's about the people who choose to stand by you, who refuse to let your dreams be destroyed by someone else's selfishness. Finally, France. Months later, I was finally boarding a plane to France, a brand new passport in my hand. My friends had managed to rebook almost everything with minimal extra costs. A few $100s in change fees was nothing compared to the joy of keeping our dream alive. "I still can't believe we're actually here," Diane said as the plane took off. I squeezed her hand, overwhelmed with gratitude for my friends. They had waited for me, and the wait was worth it. France was everything I dreamed of, and more. We wandered through the ancient streets of Paris, marveling at the Colosseum and tossing coins into the Trevi fountain. In Rouen, we spent hours in the Uffizi Gallery, staring at breathtaking art before climbing to the top of the Duomo, where the view left us speechless. Lyon was even more magical than I imagined, especially at sunset, when the canals glowed golden under the evening light. One afternoon, as we sat by the French steps, Heather took a bite of gelato and sighed. "This alone was worth the wait," she declared. Maria laughed, scrolling through the photos on her phone. "These are going to make the best Christmas cards." But the best part of the trip? It wasn't just the sightseeing. It was the freedom. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to check my phone for messages from Lauren. No last-minute babysitting emergencies. No guilt trips. No manipulation. Just me, my friends, and the adventure we had planned together. A fresh start. Back home, everything had changed. The house was peaceful now, without the constant chaos of the twins running around. No more Lawrence demands echoing through the halls. Dad had already started transferring the house money to my name instead of Lawrence. One morning over coffee, I told Mom, "I found a nice 2-bedroom apartment near the city center. It's perfect for starting my new job." She smiled, looking more relaxed than I had seen her in years. "Your father and I are so proud of you, sweetheart. You handled everything with such grace." As for Lauren, she hadn't been back to the house since the passport incident. Mom still called her sometimes, keeping the line of communication open but distant. According to Mom, Lauren had quit her job to stay home with the twins. But we all knew the truth. She hadn't chosen to stay home. She just couldn't find free childcare anymore. "Choosing my own life. She's learning to be a real mother," Mom said one day during one of our talks. "It's about time." Dad stayed firm in his decision about the money. "Actions have consequences," he would say whenever Mom brought up Lauren. "She's an adult. She made a choice to hurt her sister. I'm not going to reward that behavior." The twins still asked about me sometimes, according to Mom's updates from her phone calls with Lauren. I missed them, but I knew that keeping my distance was the right thing to do. For now. Maybe one day, when they were older, we could have a relationship that wasn't controlled by their mother's manipulation. A new beginning. In the meantime, I was building my own life. The trip to France had given me more than just memories. It had shown me who I was when I finally stopped letting others control my choices. My new apartment was a fresh start, a space that was truly mine. No one could show up unannounced. No one could demand favors. No one could make me feel like I owed them my time. Finally living for me. You know what the best part is? I asked my friends during one of our weekly dinner meetups. They looked up, curious. "For the first time, I feel like I'm actually living my own life," I said, smiling. "Not just playing a background role in Lawrence." Sometimes, guilt crept in. I thought about the rift in my family, Dad's harsh stance, the twins growing up without their aunt. But then I remembered my destroyed passport. I remembered the cold, calculated way Lauren had tried to trap me again. And I knew I had made the right choice. Lauren may have lost a babysitter, but I had gained something far more valuable. My freedom.